So besides the hull work for the waterline on down and all the touch points to keel everything, one of our major projects was redecking the fantail. In getting ready for dry docking, one of our volunteers, Ed Zakowski, has this huge basement of blueprints, and he found on blueprints for KIDD a footnote, tiny little footnote, that said that the decking was made out of galvanized steel. And that helps explain a phenomenon. They're being really loud. It's a shipyard, hey. It helps explain a phenomenon that we've noticed since KIDD got to Baton Rouge, which was the rust blooms that would continually pop up on the fantail. And a lot of people out in the comment section have taken us to task about, you know, well, you should have got it down to bare metal. And we did, and coated it properly with rust treat, primer, paint, another layer of paint. But after a little while, the same rust blooms would continue to pop up. Part of the explanation with that galvanized steel is the coating would have been damaged over all these years of KIDD being in service. Because what do you do when you have 330 sailors kind of sitting idle? They're not in combat, they're not doing, you know, anything out of the ordinary but regular maintenance. You keep them busy and you keep up with the maintenance, which includes scraping and painting. And scraping galvanized steel is going to destroy that galvanized layer that protects the steel and make it more vulnerable to salt water. Galvanized steel and salt water don't work well together anyway. As a result, Thomas C., while we were still in the repair yard waiting to get into dry dock, they started taking care of some of this. They removed all of our gun tubs, our 20 millimeters, our ammo boxes, our reel, our spare depth charge tracks, and our depth charge tracks. Even the vents and the hatch going down into aft berthing. And they got it down on the dry dock floor once we got into dry dock, and they started pulling up this steel and replacing it. So the fantail has been finished for probably a couple of months now, Molly, you think? Yeah. And Thomas C. reached out to us and they said, we've still got steel left over that you've paid for, along with the labor to go with it. If you can clear out the forward two aftermost berthing spaces, C203 and 204, then we can go ahead and replace that steel going all the way up to the aft K guns to where the corrosion really stops, the chronic corrosion. And so we put together a team, came down, pulled all that stuff out, and they have now made their way up to the K guns to replace all of that steel. And we'll take a look at that up close in just a moment. One of the things that we have done, or Thomas C. has done, that helps us a little bit, they've reattached all the equipment back here, but we've made a slight museum modification. This is where the depth charge track goes, starboard side. On the starboard and the port side, they have made attachment points to where instead of welding the rack into place, we can bolt it now into place, including off the side, off the end of the ship. And the reason this is important is when we took the ship out of the cradle and moved downriver and through the Gulf, going downriver and coming up the Homan Navigation Canal, we had a push boat on the stern. Those depth charge tracks protrude out from there, and we had to cut those off and lift them and move them forward so they wouldn't get all torn up. So on the ride back going to Baton Rouge, going back home, we can simply unbolt them, slide them forward a few feet, and then the boat can attach and help us steer up the Mississippi River. And then when they let us loose and we're back in the cradle, then we can just bolt them right back into place. No welding, no cutting, no having fire watches underneath. A simple, quick attachment, and we're done. Not 1945 configuration, but a museum mod that is beneficial for the long-term preservation of the ship and keeping from tearing things up, particularly the starboard rack, which is original to KIDD as built. The port side one was cut off back in the 60s, and Nathan Bergeron fabricated that one. But we want to keep this original depth charge track from getting torn up. Another thing we're going to have to fix, you can see right here the sorry state of the snaking for the railings. So that's going to be a Tim project once we once we get out of the dry dock and get ready to start moving, I'm going to have to start making some of this snaking, which I learned how to do from Jesse Eves, our second ship superintendent, former bosun's mate on the USS Platte, an oiler, and he set up a little pegboard for us and set up a whole rig to where we can make our own snaking. So this is not prefabricated and bought somewhere. We make it here on the KIDD. Let's go look at the other decking. So this line right here at my feet is the end of the initial fantail redecking, and you can see it crosses from side to side right in front of gun mount 55. That is the bulkhead separating C205L from 204 and 203. And so 204 and 203 is what we had to come back in November, I believe it was, and empty out. And this is now the extension of them moving forward. You can see they've cut around the good decking that was around the gun and left that in place, and they've laid new plating out and taken care of all that corrosion. And they have brought it all the way up to this point with the K-guns. We're not going any further because the deck is in good shape moving forward. Everything always seemed to stop on either side right where the K-guns started. So you can tell there was a definite stopping point without galvanized steel. And we should be in good shape moving forward and back. They still have some steel left over, and we have other areas up on the bow that were pretty thin as built, and so those have seen some wear and tear and are getting a little too thin, so we're replacing those. A couple of places up on top of the deck house around the quad 40s and by the torpedo tubes that they're going to take and replace a couple of small areas, and she should be nice and fit by the time we're done with this. This is going to be hot. So they've cut out plate and they're welding the plate in there where it's thin and it's got holes through it, like over here. It's thinned out enough. It's thinned out enough to where you actually have holes eating through. Because this wasn't thick. This is, I think he said it was a 1/16. So, and then right at the base of the stack over here, eating through. So if you look at the red outline, this is the area on the bow that they're replacing. And the bow is some of the thinnest spots that you'll see on the ship, along with the stern, as far as plating goes, which if you look back in the early days of World War II and the Fletchers around Guadalcanal, you will see where they had their bows blown off or torn up. You'll see where they had Foote and Abner Reed had their sterns blown off. Everything up on this level is paper thin compared to the middle section of the ship above the engineering spaces, which has a little bit thicker steel on it. Not armor, but just thicker steel. In fact, there's one spot I'm really surprised we're not having to replace, which is right about here, and that is paper thin. If you look at the different plating and the thicknesses that comes up. So this is one more spot. This is what's great about Thomas E. We had steel left over, we got labor hours left over, and they're like, we can take care of this. If you want to take care of it, it would behoove you to. And we're agreeing to it, and we're going to get it replaced while we can, instead of kicking it down the road to the next generation of shipkeepers. Thanks for all your support. Remember, the USS KIDD Veterans Museum does not receive any regular state or federal funding. To support this dry docking effort, go to www.usskidd.com and click on the donate button. We need help to move stuff from our want list over to the do list. Not everything is covered. We want to make KIDD better than the bare minimum, and you can help us do that. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, wow. Paint on her.
Yeah, looks like they're beginning to top coat.
Cool.
Measure 3210D, 1944. They haven't cut in yet, they're just spraying the black. So all of it should be sprayed black, and then we'll come back and mask it off for the light gray striping to go into it. And that's when you'll get your zigzag pattern.
So it's just black in the primer right now?
Yeah, what you're seeing that looks kind of silver is or light gray is the primer. And then they're putting the black on, so they'll cover all the superstructure in black. And then they'll come back and they'll put the light gray zigzags in place. That way you only mask it once instead of twice.
Yeah.
Economy of effort. After you. All right, anchor chain. And anchor. Blasted and painted. Looks good. Looks very, very good. 90 fathoms and 120 or 150 fathoms on the other one. I'd have to look. That's a lot of fathoms. And a fathom, we've learned from COVID, is 6 feet. So you stay 1 fathom away from each other. They've got the other one done too. Ready to go aboard?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
35 degrees right now.
35? A brisk 35. That's brisk, baby. That's a copyright infringement right there.